Welcome to number 18 of Pulling Back the Curtain. We have Jolene Fisher with us today. Thank you so much
You're welcome.
for coming in. I've been following. I do follow your social media presence in Spokane. We got a lot of common friends, and I know that you've done a lot of really cool things, both personally and professionally. So excited to have you on and
Thank you.
pick at it and hear more about it. So let's just start. For those who don't know you, tell them a little bit about what your companies are now. A quick bio. We'll pull it apart back, but just start with, who are you?
Okay. So I'm Jolene Fisher, and I now own No Bad Days Online. It's been in business for 5 years, but it has morphed quite a bit into what it is today. We've been really working hard with Victory Media and a lot of people behind the scenes to create some new content that we're putting now solely online for women. It's really fun because my passion is helping women to move forward in their life and create different belief patterns that they've been holding on to for so long that hold them back from really doing anything with their life, because mindset is really everything. And so that's a lot of what I'm trying to do with these new programs, is go to more of a group coaching mindset, where we go online in a group coaching format, and I have programs for those women to be able to move forward together as an accountability group.
I was going to ask, so the group is a lot of the different people who are coming to you within that small group. Cool.
Right. So I find, and research even will back this up, that people in community just work better together and on their goals together. So if they're held accountable and then they have a community of people doing the same thing, that they'll more likely accomplish the goal that they have set for themselves. So we work on weekly journaling, gratitudes, mindset shifts, along with a nutrition plan and detox plans and things like that to help them actually lose fat, which is the whole point, is
At least
to lose
the starting
fat,
point, but I'm sure they find some other things along the way. Yeah. Well, how did you, definitely want to dig deeper into that, but how did you get to this point? Did you grow up in the area? Let's start there. Are you from the Northwest, or?
I'm from Port Arthur, Washington.
Okay.
So I grew up on the Puget Sound.
Yeah, my folks used to live in Gig Harbor for quite a while.
So you know exactly where that is.
Yeah,
we were real close to the ferry dock, and so we would just be able to go to Seattle real quick. And I think I took for granted living over there because of that. It's a small town, really small. And my parents were entrepreneurial. They still own their business today. So after 35 years, they've been in business, and they're very, very successful over there. And I grew up with parents that were able to come home when I needed them, or
interesting.
Just like both of them working in the business, and that
they were in the same company.
Yeah.
What was that?
It's called Custom Hearth, and so they manufacture custom hearth pads. They also do wood pellet gas stove sales, and then they're also a construction company, so they build solariums off homes and things like that.
And they're still at it.
Yeah, I mean, my dad was one of the first to bring pellet stoves to Washington.
Really?
Yeah. So he was a Whitfield pellet stove distributor for years, and then took on another line that took them kind of into the next level, which was low pi, and then now they're really rolling, and they're actually selling their business this year. So
oh, really?
Yeah, they're retiring. My dad's almost 70.
That's cool.
So he's ready.
Have to have him on and talk about that, because that's got to. I mean, we talk, and I'm obviously earlier in the phase, the beginning parts, which I think are fascinating, full out of grind, but working, in the day job side of it, obviously work with a lot of people who do sell. That's its own emotional journey in the lead up and even in after the fact. So grew up over there. How'd you end up over here in Spokane?
Well, let me go back a little bit further.
Sure.
To kind of build up the story of how I ended up in Spokane. When I was 2 years old, my dad got in a really bad motorcycle accident, and my mom had to bring us to the hospital all the time. And we took, he was there for a month. And when he'd come home, and he had this gash on his leg that was never really healed till I was even in college. Wow. But I remember at that age, some of my earliest memories was dressing his wounds and cleaning them out, and holding my breath in between cleaning it. And I think my parents thought I was destined to be a doctor or a nurse or something. And I truly was fascinated with the human body from a very, very young age. And
interesting.
So going all the way up into high school, where you finally get that opportunity to explore that, I thought I was going to be a physical therapist. That was my goal in life. So I did hundreds of hours of volunteer work in physical therapy clinics, and worked at Tacoma General Hospital and outpatient services. And then I went off to college where the rubber meets the road. And
Yeah.
I was like, I really wasn't able to hack it in some of the harder classes. And that was a big realization for me. So, I mean, you'd think you can get a 4.0 or 3.9 pretty easily in high school, but then you go to college and chemistry and all the other classes just started to weigh so heavily on my ability to keep up. And that 2.4 in chemistry was like, you're not going to be a physical therapist. Sorry. It's just like not, it was totally out of my control. And I tried to retake the class and didn't do well. So I thought, gosh, I got to figure something else out here. And my 8th grade boyfriend from 8th grade, he went to the same college. We'd been together since 8th grade, and I followed Adam to Eastern because he played football there.
Okay.
And so I was like, I want to be with my boyfriend, and someday we'll get married. Those are all these, ideal things that I had in my brain of what I wanted to do. But, God would have it another way, and we ended up getting married. Yes, that happened, but the physical therapy thing didn't. So I thought, exercise science, that's what I'm going to do.
This is a podcast. This is a whole second podcast. Marrying your 8th grade sweetheart. That's 1,000 times more rare than being an entrepreneur.
I know, right?
Good for you guys.
I know. So I ended up going into athletic training and exercise science, double majored in that. And then upon my graduation
from Eastern,
we got married on our graduation day instead of going to graduation. So back then you didn't have the internet. You didn't know the dates when graduation was, nor did we really care that much. So we were like, let's get married instead.
Just down a different aisle. Yeah.
So, and then in my internship, finishing up college that summer of our first year of marriage, he got a job right away at East Valley High School being a head football coach, and he was teaching there. And so he had his job, but I didn't have mine yet. And my ideal was to work at a high school setting as an athletic trainer, but there was no jobs. And I got this call while I was volunteering for the American Red Cross from my head athletic trainer back at Eastern. And she said, hey, what do you think about doing a master's degree? We'd pay for it. You could be our GA for the next 2 years. And I was like, yes, I'll do that. It was $7,000 a year. That's what I got paid.
Plus education.
But I got my education paid for. Yeah. And I felt really honored to be picked for that because it wasn't like I interviewed for it. She just said, I want you to do this. And I just felt like God just plopped that right into my lap. And so I did that for 2 years. And then after that, again, it was like, okay, now what do I do? I worked for his physical therapy office for $10 an hour and I hated every second of it. I had my master's degree a month. And I was like, I got to get out of here. What is there out there?
I was going to try to spin that into a story about sticking with it, but you backfired that.
I can't do this. I can't fold towels for $10 an hour with a master's degree.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Holding out for management. So then where did you go?
Well, the same athletic trainer that gave me that call 2 years prior called me again, and she was like, hey, there's a job open at Eastern to be a professor, and it's only temporary. It's a 1-year visiting professorship, but we would like you to interview. And it's open to master's level people. So I interviewed and I got the job. And I did that. You were
teaching physical therapy classes?
Athletic training mainly. Sports medicine. Taught a lot of phys ed type classes too. That was crazy because I had to get out there and teach people that were way older than me because it's a non-traditional school. So I was 23 years old teaching my first class as a college professor, and sitting in the classroom of 24 people was probably 3/4 of them older than me because it's a non-traditional school. And so that was really intimidating, but it really taught me a lot about just don't give a crap. Just do it anyways. Like, get up there, be confident. People don't know that you don't know.
I think that's the thing, right? Well, and perspective, again, assuming it's coming from an informed place, different people's perspectives, even if they're lacking in other regards, still worthwhile. When I was in college, I got a job doing efficiency analysis in the back ends of grocery stores.
Oh, wow.
And I ended up figuring it out by the end of the summer, but what reminds me of that is a lot of the guys who are running the receiving departments in the back, they're kind of crusty characters, right? 50, 60 years old, chain smokers. And here I came, this 21-year-old who I don't think even had my first drink yet. And I'm going to tell these guys how to do their jobs, right?
Yeah.
Kind of to your point, like you had to learn to get over some things and be tactful. And, I learned more about politics, so-called, not in the traditional sense, but in how to be tactful in those 2 summers than I did in just about anything else I did. So you're teaching there for a year.
I taught there for actually ended up being 2 years because they couldn't attract a PhD professor to Eastern to live in Cheney. I don't know why, but it took them 2 years to find that person. And at that time, I was devastated. It was the end of 4 years of undergrad, 2 years of a master's, 2 years of teaching.
Yeah, a big part of your life.
8 years of my life,
So
and
full third problem almost at that point.
Yeah, but I'd already had my first baby.
Okay.
So I was ready to maybe even just be home with her, or I didn't really know what the next step was. It's always been where I just trusted that it would happen, that I'd done all the work I needed to do leading up to it, that if I, didn't burn any bridges ever, and that you always are the best at what you do because you work really hard to be the best and you do your best. And I learned that from my parents at a young age. I had to work a lot for them and just around our property. My dad made us clear tons of land for our lake place, so it wasn't just given to us. It was just hard work was always in my DNA, and then instilled in you through making you do stuff at home. So it's like, I think that I just fell into things, so to speak, because I was doing the right things leading up to that.
People try to explain that a lot of different ways, whether it's like hard work makes luck, or, I mean, you mentioned your confidence in knowing things would work out. I've got to presume, tell me if I'm wrong, that you had a lot of the same doubts, fears, questions, but then you do have that, like we all do, just the emotions that are in many respects unavoidable. But when you're putting in that work, it gives you that confidence that leads to that so-called luck that isn't really luck. I know that's for me, like every day still grind. I still have worries, concerns, thoughts, fears, but rely back on just keep pedaling, and it'll work out.
For me, a lot of it's trust that God will provide, that if I've done the right things. I mean, even just meeting Dayne Kuhlmann, and which is a very interesting thing, how we've throughout my story, you meet the right people,
right?
And those people introduce you to different things, or people that turn into the next step, and it feels so right, and so you take that next step in confidence and go with it, and then it's like, wow, I wouldn't be doing this if it hadn't been for that. And so it's kind of fun to look back, and if you've never done this before, write your story down, like every single thing where you've said yes to something and it's turned into that, where you had that why in the road decision. And mine goes all the way back to 8th grade when I met my husband. There was this Trans Am driving cute guy in high school. I'm an 8th grader. And then there's Adam Fisher over here, who's a jock and super cute. I was totally head over heels for him too, but both of them, right? And this guy over here,
he had a car.
Yeah. He wore a leather jacket. He was pretty hot. And I look back now, I'm like, ugh. What was I thinking? But if I hadn't said yes to Adam, none of this I wouldn't be even sitting here right now, just kind of going back and writing down all the periods of your life where you said yes and that trajectory changed. And I can think of multiple times. And so Adam was the first one. And then it was making that change in college to do athletic training instead of physical therapy, and not beating my head against a wall where I knew it probably wouldn't work in the end. And then finding that I loved athletic training and working with athletes and taping ankles and wearing the fanny pack around my waist and running out there when they were hurt. And that was just kind of like, wow, this is really more my jam than doing rehab all day long. There's
a lot in that, though, that I think gets missed when you're talking about, again, life choices, entrepreneurship. And I'll go back and map my story if I can recall the movements enough. But that second piece where you talk about, not getting the grade you wanted in the class. A lot of that can manifest in a lot of different ways, failure. But I think, again, and you'll hear people talk about this in a lot of different respects, but a lot of times people try to make it a very, again, binary thing of like you either persevered or you quit. And they never think about, to your point, like just keep moving down the line and then you'll find the next opening, right? It isn't necessarily, exactly a perseverance. You didn't take that class 150 times until you passed it. Some people do something like that. But by the same time, you just didn't quit and go do something else completely. You found another way to manifest your passion, which I think is the real story there that, again, too often gets lost. But
I did know that athletic training could be a means to PT school if I did the 1,500 hours I needed to do.
Yeah.
Then
find a new way.
I could apply down the road. But by the time I went through the last 2 years of my college career and got those 1,500 hours, I'm like, oh, heck no. I do not want to be a physical therapist. So I'm so glad I did that, or else I would never have known. So yeah, you're right. It's just like find that other way, and in the journey, you'll figure it out.
I had that thought for whatever reason when I have all my good thoughts when I was brushing my teeth this morning. But that was that, I forget exactly what it was today. There's always something of just keep pushing. I always think of myself, despite as much planning and as future looking as a lot of people, but in a lot of ways, because we can't tell the future, we're always kind of stumbling a little bit in the dark, trusting our faith, our families, our work. But you just keep moving. And then all of a sudden, it appears to be a wall, then the door opens up and you head through the next door, where I think a lot of people hit and stop. They look around, the future isn't visible to them. And it's like, just keep good activity. We talk about it here all the time, whether it's within our professions or our personal lives or the community thing, like good action begets good stuff. Like, don't get hung up on the direct, I did this and I didn't get this back. Like, just keep doing good stuff. And then it's interesting how things ping around the universe and then seemingly drop out of left field, but it really was a whole bunch of other things you actually were doing that made that thing
I think
happen.
You're really referring to the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset person. And if you've read that book, Mindset by Carol Dweck, it's really fascinating how there are people out there who have just a fixed mindset. They'll do something, they hit the wall, and then they think they're a failure.
Right.
But it's not that they're a failure. It's keep going or go around, or let's find a different way. That's the growth mindset, is that I will overcome this by doing something different because I believe in myself and I believe that opportunities around the corner. But the fixed mindset people can't get past that. And so there is a way to change to a growth mindset, but that takes just knowing that it's there. And mindfulness is a huge part of what I do in my coaching, because a lot of people just don't believe they can ever get to that place. Like, they failed so many times in weight loss that they're never going to get to lose that 100 pounds, 5 pounds, whatever that is. And so they've given up. And then it's like, but the giving up means that your life is going to, like, that failure or that mindset means that you won't be able to play with your kids, have lifelong fun, or sleep well, or whatever that means for bad health, right? And so I go to people, what is your alternative? You can't go back. There's no alternative going backward. It's only going forward. So let's keep going this way. And like that railroad analogy, if you get off the rails, just get right back on. It's like, I know you're going to get off a few times, but just keep getting back on and let's keep moving in the direction. Because
I've always thought of it as like chutes and ladders.
Really?
You just got to keep finding another way to the next level, right? And sometimes you're going seemingly feeling like you're going sideways, but just keep the activity, keep the momentum. Confidence, certainly. I mean, to tell you a bit, but I do just, it's the people, and I think it comes from a lack of just, like, I have utter confidence in the ability to just do a bunch of stuff and understand that a whole bunch of it isn't going to work out. And even some of the things that quote unquote work out weren't things I necessarily planned for, but somehow it's all going to make sense in retrospect. So my job today is just, you kind of alluded, work hard, do my best today, every day, and the rest of it will just take care of itself. Not that there isn't some plan, but maybe far less than I would have thought once upon a time. For a lot of other people, if you're looking for that direct response, direct success, I did a workout, I lost 5 pounds, I called 3 prospective clients, they all 3 called, like, it just, and then you're going to be so dejected, so disappointed. And you're also going, I think, at least in my experience talking with people and, doing a fair amount of coaching, whether it's with clients or people around here too, like, you're also going to miss out on a bunch of your successes. You're not going to attribute them to this work because they're seemingly random to in and of itself inspire the confidence in the activity you have today. Well, that was random, but I did these things and these failed. Like, no, that was the success. It just came about in a way you didn't expect.
Yeah.
You know?
The one quote that always drives me is by Wayne Gretzky. And he said, you miss all the shots you don't take. And I just play that in my head sometimes when I don't want to make a phone call. I'm like, well, if I don't, then I'm going to miss it anyways. It's a no regardless. You don't make the call or you make the call and they say no. It's a no either way. So why not just do it?
Yeah.
But I think the reason why we don't do those things goes back to belief in a subconscious belief level about what fear is driving, why we don't do the things we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And that's whether it's fear of the failure, fear of rejection, whatever that is. But we've got to figure out what is the trigger that's causing us to either do something repeatedly that's bad for us or not do something repeatedly that's bad for us, which means not making those calls or not doing the entrepreneurial next step. And then once we really figure that out, which is such a hard thing to talk about because people are like, well, okay, that's good and all, but how do I actually fix my brain? How do I go in and figure out what those beliefs are and then root those out and move forward in confidence? Like, good for you that you did that, but how do I do that? And again, it goes back to just finding the right help because as a 3-year-old, I was abused in a daycare situation and my parents were amazing parents. They both worked. They had to put me in daycare. And in that situation, I was verbally and physically abused. And it left such an impression on me subconsciously that I didn't realize was driving an underlying way I act or did things or didn't do things into my adulthood. And even in a physical sense of how it affected me physically in my health until I actually got counseling for it and realized what it was, named it, and then got rooted the subconscious thoughts out. I can still have a conscious thought of what happened and I can see it very vividly, but my subconscious isn't replaying that fear of rejection anymore. So it no longer drives my ability to move forward confidently in the world and make those hard calls or do things like this that are, being in front of a camera is never very...
There's a camera. There is a camera here.
But it's
stay here.
Yeah.
Yeah. How old were you when you got help for that? When you went to see a counselor?
I was in my 30s.
Really? So you just kind of dealt with that on your own for a long time.
I had a physical ailment that was just came out of the blue, and I don't care. I can talk about anything. I'm not shy. But it's okay.
Keep it as general as you want.
I had 2 kids, and so you would think, if you have urinary incontinence or urinary bladder spasms, you think, because I'm a mom, I gave birth twice, but that wasn't it at all. Someone once told me, and I do believe this, that feelings buried alive in us never die. They go somewhere and they cause something to happen in our body that can and manifest into an illness or an ailment. Like anger goes right to the liver, for instance. There's actually a book written about it. I think it's pretty cool. But I went to a medical doctor for this ailment, and she said, "Were you ever abused around the time that you were going through potty training?" And I was like, light bulb moment. I go, "Yes, I was. I was restricted from using the bathroom," and so at that point, she was like, well, I think you need to go see biofeedback therapist and get help for this. And so I did. And after 4 sessions of biofeedback and this emotional freedom technique, like tapping technique that they use, along with the biofeedback machine, I cried on the table, released the emotions, and I'd never had that sensation ever since after 4 treatments.
You just see that. It makes perfect sense just all those things. You see a thing, you hear a song, you smell a thing, a touch, and those memories that get triggered back up. I remember taking a class when I was in school on Rolfing, and they would talk about how they would hit, in the midst of the massage, a certain part that might have been an injury or an abuse or whatever, and then all of a sudden, boom, all these things that might have been repressed come forward for people. I appreciate you sharing that. Mm-hmm. We're running out of time already.
Oh man, how'd that go?
Well, we won't. We're gonna extend the clock a little bit, but I want to get through more. So you have these things, obviously what we just got done talking about happened to you at such a young age, the class failure, blessings in the terms of the jobs, but at the same time, short things, you're having to move on. So here you find yourself done now at Eastern with a child, completely valid consideration to work at home as a mom. And what was the next step?
Another blessing, really. It was a call to Russ Richardson at Whitworth University, who's the head athletic trainer.
Remember Russ? Yeah, I played football at Whitworth.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, how funny.
Helped with a few sprained ankles back in the day.
Oh, that's so cool. Gosh, I love that guy. So he gave me my next job, which was a part-time athletic training professorship at Whitworth, and I needed part-time. It was actually so perfect. I was the only one that applied for the job. I got the job because I was the only one, but I know I'm very qualified for that.
Yeah.
It was such a blessing because that first year I was a teacher there, I got pregnant with my second child in September, and the semester ends early May, gave birth to her June 2nd. And I had all summer with the second one. And then I went back to school in the fall the next year. And I'd been, so then fast forward, I was there 10 years.
Wow.
At Whitworth.
Wow.
And so I ended up teaching for 10 years there in health sciences and just loved working with Russ and a lot of the guys and gals that were there and students, of course, and multiple hundreds of students through my door over time. You still see them today. I still interact with most of them today through Facebook and all that good stuff.
What years were you there?
2002 to, I think, 2012.
Okay. Yeah, I left in 2000. So.
Yeah. Now I've been... gone for 6 years this June. So I decided to leave Whitworth really because the girls were turning of this like more preteen age and I wanted to be home with them more often, but I also wanted to do my own thing. Entrepreneurship runs in my blood because I was just like, I know I can do it. I had the confidence. Now I had this background of teaching and educating and research and all these tools behind my belt. And so I was like, I can do this. So what really gave me a big boost of confidence, though, was I was in a network marketing. I'm still in the network marketing company that I was with then. But when I matched my income doing that with what I was making at Whitworth, I said, okay, I'm gonna leave because I think I can double my money this next year. And I did. But that's been a fun journey. And that industry has given me this journey of personal growth that I've been on now I've been in that industry 10 years. And from that industry meeting Dayne and it's not like he met me because of that industry, but met me because he had heard from two people that he needed to meet with me. And then from there, Dayne was the one who suggested we start an online company. And No Bad Days Online. No Bad Days was a business I already had, but it was more personal coaching, one-on-one, along with my InBody machine, which is a weight analysis scale machine, really super fancy. And I meet people one-on-one here in Spokane. But I was like, I really want to reach more women. And I can't do that just singularly. So I need to create programs that I can offer worldwide. And that's what we've done. So that goes live this Thursday.
Awesome. Yeah. That's exciting.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Very exciting. Yeah. Let me ask, so kind of two different, seems like when I talk to people about their entrepreneurial paths, there's the people who are like, I did it. I quit my job one afternoon and I jumped. I mean, it's just the whole jump in the ocean thing. Yeah. The other one though, that I think obviously is a, maybe it's a smart way, let alone a valid way. It's kind of what you did, but that requires a ton of work. I mean, you were a wife, a mom, had a job, then you had built up this No Bad Days to at least, comparable income. Yeah. So how did you fit that all in?
Okay. Yeah. Very supportive husband, number one. So he's always been there to support me. He has my back 100%. Whatever you need me to do with the kids so you can do your thing. Cool. Go for it. Because he's a teacher. And
we're going to have to edit this out. I don't know that everybody I don't want that kind of pressure in my home life.
No, Gosh, we've known each other. We've grown up together. So he wants the same things I want.
He probably still feels threatened that he doesn't have that Trans Am. And he's still trying to dig himself out. He's grateful that he got a shot. So supportive husband. Yeah,
he wants to be there for all the kids' things. And he's a football coach. So honestly,
is he still at East Valley?
Yes. So he was the head football coach at East Valley High School for 19 years. But while he was there in the falls, I really pulled.
Is he still the head coach?
He resigned this last year.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why in a second.
Sure.
But during the football season, I really pulled back from all the work that I would do. And then in the winter and spring and summer was when I really hit the pedal to the metal. So we just kind of worked together that way. I also had daycare for the girls a couple days a week, at least 3 days a week, while I was teaching at Whitworth. And in my off time at Whitworth, while I wasn't teaching classes and I had open office hours and I didn't have anything to grade, I would work on my other businesses and just use every little bit of time that I had. And I prioritized well.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, and still to this day, I do not sit very much. I'm kind of a workaholic, and I don't watch TV. I read books on Audible as I'm driving because I don't have time to read a book. I honestly just kind of work in the pockets of my life, and that's what I did.
It is crazy. I was joking with you before, at least it won't make the podcast, but not understanding parenthood, right? I don't know that you can until you do, and alone being a business owner. And even once I had started my business, as much time as I put into that, there were still some moments to watch TV or play a little Madden or take a nap or do whatever the case may be. And then you realize, okay, then you start giving up some stuff, but not other things. And like, okay, I'm becoming the cautionary tale, the guy who's gained 30 pounds. I need to reverse that, right? But to your point, I mean, now I'm listening to podcasts quite literally when I'm getting ready. I'm like, hey, I have 30 minutes while I'm shaving and brushing my teeth, et cetera. I'm going to listen to books on tape. I'm going to TV goes by the wayside. My wife's happy to know all the video games went by the wayside a handful of years ago. But you just, certain things got to go, and every single minute's got to count.
Yep.
You know, I mean, I'm always, even when I'm riding my Peloton bike, a lot of time I'll have something on the TV or be listening. I mean, it's just always trying to multitask as much as I can. So
yeah, I don't think that much time goes by in the car where I listen to actual music. The only time I do is when I work out. And when my kids are in the car, because of course they don't want to listen to a podcast.
Right.
I have a 14-year-old daughter and a 16-year-old daughter now. So when I left Whitworth, they were, 9 and 10, 9 and 11 or something.
Yeah.
And I just want to real quick talk about the little bit of time between when I left Whitworth and now.
Yeah,
but
please.
When I left Whitworth, I didn't realize at the time how much I would need to build up the assets that we have in our business and really work really hard because, and it's just funny how life works out that way because we didn't know we were going to welcome another child into our life.
Yeah.
But God had bigger plans for us and for him. And my husband was just, doing his thing as a football coach, always being there for the kids and being a support structure for the football players. And along comes this kid that needed his help and trusted my husband for that help and asked for help. And so we brought him into our home back in March of 2016. And within a week, he was calling us mom and dad. And
that's so awesome.
We were totally in love with him too.
So this was a student at East Valley who was homeless.
Yes.
And played football and reached out to your husband, his coach, for help. How long? What was the thought process of, because it's a big decision.
Well, Adam offered our home to him before he even asked my I was like, he came home and he goes, well, guess what we're going to do? And I'm like, what?
I'm guessing you guys are fairly simpatico if you've been together for 30 plus years now?
Yeah, well, 28.
28 since 8th grade,
So since 91,
Wow.
And when he came home and told me that, at first the shock was like, oh, what? Okay, we have 2 girls and then this 17-year-old. What are you thinking? Like, are we going to be able to do this? Is it, how long is this going to be? Is it temporary? Or is it going to be till he's out of high school? And then I called some shelters to ask, like, do you take young boys? And trying to get him a home to stay in besides ours for a minute. Like, it didn't take more than a few phone calls. And I'm like, oh, heck no. This kid is not going to stay at these places. I really want, and the mama bear in me was like, no, he needs a real home. He needs a place where he feels love and support, and he needs boundaries and structure. And little did he know he was moving into the Beaver Cleaver family because it was like, we sat him down and here's the rules. And if you break one of these cardinal rules, then not that we're kicking you out, but boy, it's going to be some big consequences. You can't live the life you were living before and live under our roof. And he took that and ran, and he's doing great things.
What an amazing testimony of what people do talk about, which is the boundaries that kids want. That they may push this, that, or whatever, but they really do want a safe spot. And someone else to say this was, it's my mom and dad's fault that I can't do this or that. So that's neat. Yeah, teaching him responsibility for his own actions and giving him consequences when there was consequences needed to be doled out, because there was plenty. It was not easy. It's probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my whole life. But it's taught me so much about myself. So whenever you do something hard, you're going to learn a lesson in it, right? And that lesson for me was learning that I was a control freak and that I didn't truly know the meaning of unconditional love. So that was interesting, because after having 2 kids of your own, you take it for granted. You totally take it for granted until you actually have to put your feet to the fire and say, I love you regardless of what you do, and mean it. And the next day show up and hug and love him and move on like you would your own flesh and blood. And when I figured that out, I was like mind blown about what the true meaning of unconditional love truly meant, and what, So that's been the biggest lesson I've ever learned. And he's in college right now? Doing well? He's
doing well.
What year is he in school?
He plays football for WSU, so he's a redshirt freshman, and he's got this fall and 3 falls after that, so he's got a lot of years ahead of him.
That's awesome. Does he think he knows what he wants to do yet?
Oh gosh, if he could do anything with his hands or fish, his whole rest of his life, he'd be happy. But he's actually hoping to get in the NFL. He's got all the tangibles to do it. He was a state title holder in the 100 and 200 for 2A, and broke records, still haven't been beaten today. So
there you go.
He's a super fast kid.
They sling the ball around. I'll root for him but one time a year. One time a year as a Husky. So, and I'll root for him anyway. They can score a bunch of touchdowns, just one less than my Huskies. So, you mentioned your husband stepped down and you were going to come back to that. So 19 years, that's a long time in one place, one school. So
Adam and I get our joy out of watching our kids do stuff. And so we don't watch a lot of TV, if any. And get joy out of those other things, or we get joy out of like taking time out and going into our kids' basketball games, or my other daughter does ballet and Roderick does football. And so that's why he quit, since he had to. I asked him this question. I go, how happy would you be if Roderick's playing and you are coaching football on a Friday night and you can't go see his game? It's like, I would be really unhappy. I'd hate that. I'm like, well, then there's your answer. Like, you have to figure out what makes you happy, what's going to devastate you, and then go in the direction of what you want. This is not a job that we need you to have. So I know it fulfills you and it gives you purpose and it allows you to have something that's yours. But it's just crazy how the timing on when Roger came into our life and how him getting into college just was like the right timing for Adam to leave as well. And it felt good for him. So now we go and watch all of his games. So Adam travels to all the away games and we go to every home game, and we're like raving fans.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
No, and that's something we do here all the time. When we bring clients in, they get like, when are we picking the investments? Like, because there's usually 2 to 3 meetings, and like, what do you want? And there's always a trade-off, right? And I know you must see this, is just, again, how much we're driven by subconscious decisions, emotion, things that don't necessarily reflect our true values, not in the sense of right or wrong, but just what's going to make you happiest, Or yes, I know you want both of these things, but one of them's got to give, or at least in part, if not in full, and walking through that path. And that's really hard to do by yourself. And that's one of the things when we'll talk for those clients who maybe are a little bit more controlling or been doing it themselves, we'll say, tell them like, this is not about who's smarter or better or more knowledgeable or any of those things. It's just about having a partner who cares about you, who wants to walk this journey with you, who hopefully has some great insights to be shared. But if nothing else, is a sounding board for you to reflect, because in a lot of cases you do have it, just no one's walked you through the process to really pull that out, right? And we see it all the time here. So what else surprised you about leaving Whitworth and going full-time businesswoman? Anything you'd go back and tell yourself pre-jump?
Well, it's funny because when you were talking about boundaries and how kids need boundaries, I was thinking, well, entrepreneurs need boundaries too, because you work for someone else and you're used to being told what to do, when to show up. And then as an entrepreneur, you don't have that. And so that was probably my biggest struggle, is making the time to do the things I needed to do in the midst of my busy life. Because in terms of priorities, it's like, I could procrastinate on this to do this because I know the kids are going to be home at this time. I need to get this, and this done for the household. But then I got to get this, and this done for my business. And then sometimes a day would go by and you don't do anything on business, and you're like, oh gosh, I can't let that be a habit. It starts to, that's I think the biggest regret I would have, is not understanding what the most important thing was to need to get done, and prioritizing and time blocking would be another thing that I would have gone back and
Did you find that you had to let go of, I know for me, it's the old sport camp thing of when you're not practicing, someone else is. And when you meet in head-to-head competition, they'll beat you. And like, I was the guy who just always listened, even to a fault. I joke, mostly through a lack of creativity rather than obedience. But I took all that stuff to heart. So I know plenty of people beat me in sports, which is why I'm not in the NFL. I wish all the best to your son. But then as an entrepreneur, like, there's always another thing that could be done when you talk about boundaries, right? And creating those healthy spaces. And you can always be afraid of, who is this person that's out doing something that's going to, and it can, I know for me, it can take some unhealthy work-life balances, some unhealthy mindsets. And learning those things, even having, and I talk about this a ton with even younger people as they're coming out. I was really good as a student of see target, hit target. And then you get out, you're making your own targets. And then you got to figure out how to hit them, right? I mean, it's just it's not something that you're really trained to do until suddenly you're having to do it on the fly. It's a unique challenge.
You're good at one thing, right? Or you're good at something. Like for me, it's one-on-one coaching people and really fleshing out of them what it is that they need to do to change, and writing out a plan for them. But when it comes to the accounting and the bookkeeping and the website and the social media and every single other thing you need to do to make money, because you have to draw people in, or how else will they know about you? It's like, I'm the best thing out there. Come find me. How are they going to find you if you're not doing that too? But then if you aren't making money, how can you afford it? And so it's just like, it was a lot of work up front just to be wear all those hats. And so it takes time. It's not like, and what I found is you can't become an overnight sensation. It's so much work. And gosh, I've been doing No Bad Days for 5 years, and now just finally after 5 years doing more of a group coaching online format, which is really a great progression of where I've been. But I don't think I could have started that in the beginning, not knowing what I've learned in the last 5 years to get me to this point. So it's just, if people learn anything, it's just patience in the process, and that you will get there.
What are some of your favorite stories, obviously without sharing names or too many specific, like what are some of the joys you've gotten to have over the last 5 years working with people? One of them was a student of mine at Whitworth, and she graduated, and I found her again like 3 or 4 years after graduation, and she really wanted to make some big changes after she'd had her second baby. And so she hired me to be her health coach, and I gave her the plan, and she executed on that plan. She was one of the most diligent, coachable, like consistent, persistent people I've ever had. She lost 65 pounds while I worked with her. And then she wanted to do a bikini competition. So she went on and hired a bikini competition coach. But
because of her losing that and then continuing on her journey, she's landed in a really big magazine called Oxygen Magazine. And it was pretty cool to see
really cool.
Her life completely change in every way, not just weight loss, but she's just a totally different person in a good way with her mindset. And that's with a lot of people that I help is they'll lose the weight, but then they become a different person in the process in learning their confidence. They get that confidence back.
Something about, I've been calling it the cathartic sweat. I got no plans to enter bikini competitions anytime soon, but just growing up an athlete, then you get busy and just being able to, and then you do knucklehead. I was a football guy, right? So maybe your husband could. You see all this football, and you're like, I'm getting kind of old to be doing heavy bench, right? Like it's time to move on. It's time to grow up. And my hamstrings are pretty tight. My bench isn't helping my hamstring, lower back issues. And
that's hilarious.
But just lifting, I'm sure there's all sorts of endorphin effects, obviously, but I just think your mindset, focus, and again, just how much discipline can you bring into your life trickles into all sorts of different things.
Because I can give someone a plan, but if they don't execute it and they're not coachable, then I can't help them.
Yeah.
So they have to be ready and coachable. And what I give them, they need to follow.
It gets back to that first thing we're talking about, like just do, right? I mean, I think one of the biggest things I have thinking back to when I actually used to be more of an athlete was you always think you're going to have these heroic workouts, right? You go back to your days where, I would Xbox jumps and this and that. You're like, you know what you need to do? This is myself. You just need to get on the treadmill for 20 minutes today and walk. Do something. And then the heroic workout might appear, right? Suddenly you have more to give than you realize you did. But like, don't wait 3 weeks waiting for the time where like I really feel like it today, just creating those little habits. What's one of the biggest misconceptions? So let's just say someone's listening to this podcast and they're saying, I don't need a coach, or I don't think Jolene seems super nice, but I don't think it's for me because. What are some of the common misconceptions someone has about why they wouldn't be a fit for you that aren't true?
That's a good question.
I can role play with you if you
want.
I would,
I would go back to something I want to say before we end, then maybe that'll tie back into this. But
sure.
One of the things that I teach people is think simple every day, and that's an acronym. So applying spirituality to their life every day, intellectual stimulation every day, the mental, psychological, working on that, whatever that is, take a step in the right direction every day, and then physical activity every day. Love, relationships, work on something in your relationships every day. Eat healthy every day. These
every
are your
every day.
Simple, like your simple. Take your simple vitamins.
Last
every
Friday
day,
didn't count for me. I had mini corn dogs and a cocktail.
Like if somebody doesn't fit into
# gilded unicorn.
But it's not like they have to be perfect in every category every day. It's what if you got 1% better every single day, right?
Do a little bit, yeah.
Do a little bit.
Yeah.
And so if they don't fit into that mindset, then they probably aren't going to want to work with me. I'm also very spiritual focused. And if that's not the mindset somebody has or wants, then they probably will not want to work with me. But I'm going to work on the whole body. I'm a holistic health coach. I'm not just, here's a plan, here's an eating plan, follow that and go. Because I find that fails every time. So if somebody just wants that, they're probably not for me either. They really need to be willing to work on everything, like, and take that in and really grow with that, because I truly do believe those are the things that are going to be life-changing for them. They have been for me. I call it no bad days because it's a perspective. It's not that we aren't going to have bad days. It's just that perspective we have that even in the midst of a bad day, there's a lesson to be learned. And that every person in every situation we can learn something from. So whether they work with me for a little bit or for a long time, they're going to get some tools, right? They're going to walk away with something that's going to stick with them, that might bring them to that next journey. And that's how it's been for me, hiring life coaches or hiring counselors or going to a conference and listening to a speaker. You take something away from everybody that then builds on the next thing that gets you to that next place. So
right.
yeah.
Nope, that answers the question. So I'm trying to be better about this, and particularly for you. By the time this podcast goes live, No Bad Days, the web experience, the digital experience will be live. Where do people find you? Social media, websites, if someone wants to, again, follow from afar and just learn from you, maybe the guys who aren't going to qualify, or for the women who maybe want to become part of the plan, where should they look?
NoBadDays.biz is my website, which is the main hub of everything, where they can sign up, get on my VIP list, and they can watch a webinar every Wednesday. Or sorry, I don't know why I said Wednesday. Every Thursday at 6 p.m. There's a webinar.
Thursday at 6 p.m.
Every Thursday.
All right.
Yeah, at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we're offering a webinar that will then teach them about the program offering that I have called Fat Loss for the Busy Woman. And the webinar will really go more in depth on my story and the simple plan and some of those things, and my 5 steps for lasting change. Then we'll go into talking about the Fat Loss for Busy Women program and what they get. So social media is No Bad Days Online on Instagram. Jolene Fisher, lifestyle coach, motivator, educator on Facebook, at least as of right now. Yeah. We're trying to change that name to No Bad Days Online.
Okay.
And I do have just jolene.fisher as an Instagram handle for my personal page. So if people are interested in following my personal life, they can do it there. Or
well, you've got a lot going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'd love to have you and Adam both back sometime and talk more about just the dynamics of being 2 busy people who are doing a bunch of cool stuff, both personally and professionally. But thanks so much for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.